I figured this is a way that I can go through while I'm creating this outline. This will also explain like the story so far. So if you've ever watched any of my streams and been confused as to what the hell that I'm writing, this is probably the one to watch to discover what the hell the story is. Hello. How's everybody doing today? So this is kind of an impromptu stream, but I finally got things together so that I'm prepared to change this outline that I hope you can see. I hope my chat's not, it's a little bit in the way. Let me see if I can fix that. We can kind of mess around with, we can use this as reference, you know? So I'll be doing that a little bit, and I'll probably have it in a separate window because what I want to do is just rewrite it from scratch. And I've already started a little bit. I decided to go live when I started on this because I feel like it's part of the process that should be recorded. My outlining process is a lot different from my writing process. So like, I'm a little bit worried about how well it will stream, because a lot of my process for outlining is like being halfway distracted, if that makes any sense. Like, I come up with these stories piece by piece, like whilst doing other stuff a lot of the time. Now this is a little bit different because it's a rework, right? I already know what the story is. I just need to get it on paper as a guideline so that I don't forget bits and pieces. And the very start of it really is extremely easy. So we can start with that because it's already right here. You'll see. It's just each chapter and the different pieces of writing that make up that chapter. That's part one, right? It's not finished. You'll see needs a rewrite. Everything's in first draft form or needs a rewrite. Little parts of it are unfinished, like the prologue, which I think is going to be Darius. I don't know what to do with Eldregards, so I'm actually going to leave a note of that too. I figured this is a way that I can go through while I'm creating this outline. This will also explain like the story so far. So if you've ever watched any of my streams and been confused as to what the hell that I'm writing, this is probably the one to watch to discover what the hell the story is without needing me to read the entire thing. I will have a reading video up. It's taking a lot longer than I expected to read the entire thing out. So for that purpose, this could serve as like a quick summary sort of a deal. So that being said, we've got this unfinished prologue. So this guy Darius Rhymesayer, he gets kidnapped in the woods and he finds a little stone. It's not finished yet. We've only got him getting taken away by these guys Adho and Loka, and they are connected to some of the villains in the story, let's say. So we've got Darius, and then we've got this Eldregard prologue, which was the original prologue to this story, the one that shows up right here, where he assassinates a member of the High Council of Amphora, Magister Rolene, a brand new member. This is probably... I want to keep it somewhere. It might be a flashback now. Not sure what's happening to that. I'm leaving it by the wayside for now. And then we go into all of part one, which is basically written. For the most part, I've written all of part one. What we're going to do is we're going to look through the actual manuscript and just put that down as the outline for part one. And this is where I can explain some things. So we've got part one, Water to Steel. 1. Apprentice to the smith. Aaron is interrupted by Eldregard and the Kinblades. So Aaron is at his smithy, just working away. He's the apprentice to this famous smith Everin, when suddenly a man in a cloak shows up at his door. And he turns around, and the guy's scruffy, and suddenly 2 armed men in full plate armor show up and arrest the man in front of him. He's like, what the hell's going on? The captain of these men, Cornelius, approaches Aaron and asks him to come down to the Kinblade headquarters later that day. They just have some questions, right? So that's that. And there's parts that need rewrites in there and stuff. Now that I think about it, this part probably should be having the status of I'll keep it as needs rewrite. So that happens, and that's our introduction to Aaron. He's basically the main character of this novel. Aaron's sister then shows up at the smithy, and you're introduced to his sister, Orie, and they talk for a while. You get to know about Aaron's family a little bit from his perspective. And then we jump into chapter 2, which is from the perspective of Eldregard, the man in the hood who was just arrested. And he is being brought into the Kinblade headquarters. He, from his perspective, he's really messing with the people who are bringing him in. It's a little bit comedic. And he finally gets brought to a cell, but he gets one of them to rough him up a little bit, which damages the handcuffs that he was given. And the handcuffs are made of rubber for some unknown reason to the reader. And the prison cell that he's put in is made entirely of plastic, which he calls exoplastic or something. And it's a little bit confusing. And then he lays down on this cot and is like, it seems like he's waiting for someone to arrive. He's like, when is that person going to arrive? But he closes his eyes, he sleeps for a minute, and then he hears the sound of a voice approach. And that's the end of this chapter. And this plastic cell thing is going to come up very soon again, as you will see. In a number of ways. A number of people are going to be being held in these plastic cells. I'm putting the perspective characters' names in front of each section, and in this outline, these little addendums are essentially to show like the separate documents that make up the chapters, because I've sliced them up each to show like the part where I could move it somewhere else if I really wanted to. So like I could put a perspective in between him getting brought to the headquarters and thrown into the cell if I wanted to, for example. So if I wanted to combine his chapter with Carlos's chapter here, I could, that's the basic idea. So speaking of Carlos's chapter, Guard Post 12. We are introduced to Carlos here. And Carlos is an Amphoran City guard. He likes where he's at in life. He's got it good. Hanging out with his guard buddies outside of different guard posts each day. And he gets called in by some person of higher rank who he's a little like, why does this guy get a better rank than me? It's not really important. You're introduced to the world of being an Amphoran guard there. The guy who shows up tells Carlos that he's needed by one of the guard captains. So Carlos gets excited because usually when he's called in like this, it's because he's one of their better investigators. The guard doesn't necessarily do a lot of like investigation, but when it comes up, when some sort of unknown crime happens, like a missing person or a murder or things, Carlos is the sort of guy who does a good job at solving those for the guard. So that is what he's being called in for. He doesn't know why, for what, but he goes and visits his guard captain, Terramore, and this guy tells him what they need him for. There's a missing servant to a noble person who Carlos has been tasked with finding, because they've sent the entire guard force out to try and find this woman, and she is nowhere to be found. So they're asking for his help, because this Captain Terramore knows him pretty well and wants him on the case, essentially. And that's the essence of Carlos's introduction. Then we jump over to Aaron again. Aaron is finishing the sword that he was working on, where he cut his hand on the sword when we were introduced to his sister. She threw him an apple, and he caught it, and suddenly his hand hurt, and he realized that he'd sliced his hand open and not even realized it. So that happened. So finishing the sword, he's basically just doing that, and then he goes looking for Aurier. That's what I was missing. Okay, good. Then we cut over to Aaron outside Kinblade Market HQ, talking to a beggar. Now this scene is it's to show Aaron's ignorance, for one, and it's also to world build for the reader, to show what the money system is. Because the coins in M4 all have very specific names, rather than penny and whatever that we classically use, nickels and dimes and whatever. Instead, they have different names, like pebbles and flickers and flames and stuff like that. It's all very elemental. The highest denomination is called a river. They're all based around the 4 elements, and that's a little world building thing that I threw in because while this world isn't necessarily, it doesn't have an elemental magic system, the history of it is elemental. I don't know how to say much more than that. I had originally planned this entire world to be based on fire magic, and it's a long story, but I started writing a story about a guy who used fire magic and was from this big wooded area, and his story kind of didn't work for me. So what I instead did is I took his entire concept and made it the ancient history of this world. And I built a new magic system that kind of overtook it. And that stone that Darius had, I'm going very off track right now, but that stone that Darius had is actually the cause of the entire shift in the magic system that takes place in this world. So that's a lot of world building stuff that is really interesting, but also not relevant at the moment. But that's where they get their names for coinage from, and it's probably something that no one actually knows any longer. Yeah. So Aaron outside talking to the beggar, and Aaron Kinblade HQ. So after Aaron visiting the Kinblade's headquarters, we jump back to Carlos momentarily. for factory. So what this is Carlos goes to interrogate the factory supervisor, or question him to find out more about the missing person. This is the factory that she was sent to work at, that he was told about. And this, then some like a big shelf in this warehouse just tumbles over outside of the supervisor's office. So the supervisor runs out to check that, and Carlos finds himself alone in the guy's office. So he does what any investigator would, and he looks through all the guy's shit. And he finds some interesting things, some documents, a blueprint to the factory, and like a manifest of some kind. And that's it. He gets suspicious of this manifest, I'll say that. So at this point, we jump over to a character who we haven't met yet, Sheila. And Sheila is breaking into the same factory which Carlos is in. So she is actually the person who caused that shelf to tumble over, because she's sneaking in and accidentally knocked it over. So she runs for this door. Well, she goes through a whole bunch of stuff. She sneaks by those guards after knocking that over. They can't find her. Then she finds herself inside of this really strange place that she is very familiar with. I believe I give it right away that she had recently just escaped from this factory. And all I need to note for myself is that she fights 2 prison guards. But it's essentially a big prison made of plastic. And we get some world building into it, and we get some explanation of Sheila's character and where she comes from. And she essentially had just escaped from this place. One might intuit that she is the person who went missing, who Carlos is looking for. Though I don't make it necessarily obvious there. A strange escape. Right. So this is where we jump back to Aaron. And Aaron is leaving Cornelius's office, and that's the part that I didn't write. Aaron, I hadn't solidified this Cornelius character, the head of the Kinblades. Well, not the head of the Kinblades, but like a commanding officer of the Kinblades who's like he's not in charge, but he's a guy. He's like the he's the relatable villain character in a way. You know, he's the guy who's just doing his job, but he's also a villain. And I just hadn't been able to grasp him. I feel like I'm ready to write some of his stuff now, but it took a long time. Anyways, Aaron speaks to him here. Aaron Kinblade HQ convo with Cornelius. A strange escape. Aaron leaves Cornelius's office, lost in thought. The conversation with Cornelius goes from questioning about this guy that they captured to Cornelius wanting to recruit Aaron into the Kinblades. And the Kinblades are like, sort of like they're knights in shining armor who are also like the FBI and the CIA of Amphora. They're like the top law enforcement office in the country, and they're kind of like extremely militant. So anyways, he's asked to join them. So he's like shocked. His mind is blown right now. So Aaron leaves Cornelius' office lost in thought because of all of that. And he runs into Eldregard, the guy in the cloak. He runs into this guy and freaks out. And this guy's like, look, listen. I know you're scared, but I know your stepfather, and he's in danger, and you need to come with me and be quiet if your stepfather's gonna live, right? So he says that to Aaron, and Aaron's like, what the fuck, are you threatening me? Like they have this argument in the middle of this headquarters. And hold on a moment, we're missing something here. So let me find that. Let's just check it really quick. Opening one eye, Eldregard stared at the monster from his cot. Right, okay, so I had this labeled as Fomorian intro because I thought it was just him speaking the words. But Eldregard actually wakes up and kills this monster who approaches him in his cell. He gets it angry enough that it destroys the bars to his cell, and then he kills it. And it's basically like this vampire lich sort of a monster thing. So yeah, I'm sorry that I neglected to mention that earlier. It just slipped my mind. So that happens here. And then he escapes in this first chapter where we are introduced to him. So the whole chapter goes from him being locked away to him waking up and freeing himself by being like clever as shit, essentially. So you're introduced to this guy. It's like, wow, he's actually like skilled. I know the way I'm presenting him probably sounds lame as hell, but anyway, Aaron leaves Cornelius' office lost in thought. Aaron runs into Eldregard, and Eld explains Everin is in trouble. There we go. At this point in this chapter, we cut away from them momentarily. And we go into the first perspective for Orie. And she is at the market basically negotiating with a merchant to pick up a supply of food for the family, essentially. To make a long story short, she was just there to pick up a couple things, and she ends up with like a ton of food at a good deal. You also get a ton of world building from that. It's unfinished. It needs a rewrite because I did a horrible job with it. It doesn't do what I want it to do, which is to show that she's like extremely intelligent, basically, and that she can kind of use that intelligence to like she's supposed to convince this guy that it's a haggling thing, right? She's supposed to use her intelligence specifically to get a good deal out of this guy, basically. So that's what that's supposed to be, and then we jump back into their escape. So we get this like very brief glimpse of her, and it's like it's a little bit like, what the hell? Why did we read that, right? Like a little bit of that to it, because when we jump back, you'll see in a moment. So Aurier's at the market, and then Eld and Aaron escape. Well, Aaron escapes the Kinblade headquarters with Eldregard, who is actually escaping. So this happens because Eldregard starts using magic like crazy. And the magic in this world is material flux, and I've done a number of things talking about the system. I can't get into it right now, it'll take way too long. So, but in essence, people can transform matter into other kinds of matter. So, and they can change effects of matter. So he's able to, doing that, he's able to make them appear invisible. He's able to, like, basically blow a hole in the wall and then reform the wall after they get through it. All this cool stuff. So they escape doing that, but then he immediately says, get me to a bed and get me a nice meal, and collapses because he like overworked himself using all the magic. At which point we jump to this new character, another new perspective. So I'm opening up a lot of perspectives in the first 8 chapters or so, right? But we're focused on Aaron, and yeah, we're focused on Aaron a little bit. So we see a lot from him, and we see all these new perspectives pop up in between his chapters. I like the way that works so far. So 8 is a parish of one, and this is where we introduce Parish, the preacher. He is giving, like, he's kind of standing on a apple box in the middle of the street giving a sermon, right? And he's giving it to about 4 people who seem very uninterested, but are hanging around because they're they're kind of guilted into it, right? And he recognizes this, and he talks it, and it's all from his perspective, and he's thinking about how much he hates preaching. Like, he loves everything about being like a priest. And so he gives this sermon, and then out of nowhere, this young man comes running down the road with a wheelbarrow and nearly hits him. And as he's moving out of the way of the wheelbarrow, he like trips and falls, right? So Parrish gets hit by Aaron. So their worlds kind of collide in that moment. And then we jump over to an Aaron perspective and find out, oh, Aaron's the one pushing the wheelbarrow, because he's thinking like, oh my god, I'm pushing this wheelbarrow down this fucking road and this is crazy, because Aaron has Eldregard in the wheelbarrow covered. So Aaron confronted and unloads Eld. So what happens is Parrish was actually very close to Aaron's smithy, and that's where Aaron was headed, with Eldregard in the wheelbarrow. So he brings Eldregard all the way to his front door, and he's like looking around because there's neighbors and the street is busy, and he doesn't want to unload an unconscious person out of a wheelbarrow and just bring them inside. So he kind of stands there dumbfounded when Parrish approaches and starts scolding him for being reckless and shit. And basically, long story short, he's like trying to lie his way out of it and failing, and suddenly like an arm like flops out of the wheelbarrow and Eldregard starts groaning and shit, and Parrish like freaks out a little bit, but then Eld like scolds him and tells him off, and he's like, I don't need any help, fuck you, go away. He calls him conduit, which is like an old term for an old title for people of his religion. So Parrish is a little bit stunned by that, but Aaron barely notices, and then they go inside, and that's the end of that chapter. So that brings us to Blueprint for Freedom. So we jump into a Carlos perspective to start with. And Carlos, prison, Max, Andy. Okay. Carlos finds the prison. So what happens here is Carlos is has searched through this guy's office, and he leaves with these documents that he found because he knows this guy's not any help, and he thinks that these documents might help him because and as he's leaving, or like he's kind of hiding out, like paying attention to what's happening around him but not wanting to really be noticed, he's looking through the blueprint, and he notices a strange thing on the blueprint where there's like an entrance to an underground place there, and it kind of, he's like, I didn't know about this, right? This might be worth looking into. I want to know everything I can about this factory. It's my only lead. So he sees that, and he looks at this manifest, and I believe, forgive me if I'm wrong on these details, but he sees something on this employee manifest, and it sticks out to him. So he decides he needs to investigate this factory further because something weird is going on. Because the supervisor didn't answer some of his questions and seemed like he was lying, and now this. So they're definitely trying to hide something. He thinks it might be related. So he goes and checks out this weird spot on the blueprint. He sneaks by some of the guards and finds this entryway. An entryway we've already been introduced to by Sheila breaking back in. So he goes in, he finds the door ajar. He's like, well, okay, because Sheila broke into it, and he goes down there, and he finds this prison that this factory has been using to enslave people who can use magic. I don't think I've addressed that yet in the actual story, but that's what's happening. So he goes down there, and he runs. He suddenly hears voices. He like doesn't run into any guards. He's like a little bit. He's freaking out a little bit. He goes by a lot of empty cells, and then he hears voices. And he sees that a guard is speaking to two prisoners. So he hides out, waits for the guard to go away, and then he comes down and he has a conversation with these guys, Max and Andy. He talks to them for a while. They explain what's going on a little bit of what I just explained before. And he's like, this is fucked up. Like, this is not an official prison in any capacity. What the hell's going on? He doesn't know what to think in some ways, but that's the gist of it. And then we jump over to Sheila. And Sheila has already reached her friends. She's kind of dealing with the fact that she just like killed two guards, but she finds like her cell block, and she starts to get them out of the cells because she stole the keys from the guards. So Sheila is freeing her friends and talking to them, and you get introduced to a few of them. You get introduced to like 4 of them, I think. There's Georgia, and there's names are escaping me. There's a few other people. There's one guy who's like a mute, and he is important later, but I forget his name. So anyway, we've got her freeing her friends, and then we jump back to Aaron. For a stirring conversation. I don't like that name either. All these chapter names are going to change. This is a big chunk of exposition that explains like what the hell is happening. It's essentially Eldregard explaining that he knew Aaron's stepfather, Everin, that he's been put on a blacklist because he has connections to Eldregard's organization. He doesn't mention the name of the organization, but they're called the Windsworn. And long story short, he believes Everin has probably been like captured and imprisoned for questioning and stuff, and he wants to break him free. But he came here to find Everin to warn him that he'd be in trouble. But since Everin hasn't been around, he expects that he's been captured, essentially. Then Aaron's like, what the hell? Like, I need proof that you know him. This seems fake, essentially. Like, he's like, this doesn't seem legit. You're kind of sketchy. I just talked to this guy from the FBI, and he told me that you're sketchy and you kill people. So Eldregard tells him to asks him if he's ever seen a little statuette with an E on it, and he actually has. Aaron has. And he's like, bring it to me. Aaron's like, okay, sure. And then Aaron goes and he gets this statuette. Now, there's a few things I need to change about this. Just little edits, because this statuette originally contained one stone, a gem that holds like the energy that is used by people who use the magic in this world, and I actually need it to contain two, and I need Aaron to discover here that there's two of them and to take one. I don't know how I'm going to make that work, but I'm going to change a few things here. But anyway, Aaron discovers that, and he brings it to Eldregard, and Eldregard reveals that the statue is like a container for these gems that hold the energy that's needed for the magic. And he describes the magic to Aaron, and he says, I use this magic, and that's why they're after me, and that's why they're after your father, because he knows about it and he's connected to me and my friends who can do this magic. So that's that. Aaron Eld Talk Flux. So that chapter kind of settles everything down into an understandable, like, cohesion of sorts, where you finally learn that this magic is happening. You figure out why Aaron is like connected to all of this, all that stuff happens there. And it's like there's a lot that happens in that conversation that I didn't even get a chance to explain. So that's an important one. And then we jump over to Life Hero, which is Aurier is kidnapped. So Aurier is a little pissed off about like life in general, and she is like she just finished dealing with that merchant, and she sits down in like a park basically, and she puts all of the stuff that she bought that she has in like her bag to her side, and she's staring at this statue of the Life Hero, which is like a mythological figure that everyone considers to be like the person who founded the country of Amphora and saved everyone and like did great stuff, right? So like kind of one of her idols basically. So she's there. You get a bunch of a little bit of info about the Life Hero and who she was. A little kid with red hair steals the stuff that she just bought. So she's mad. She chases after him. He runs into an alleyway. So she runs into these alleyways. She's like, who cares if it's dangerous? The Life Hero wouldn't just let someone steal her shit. So she does that, and she gets knocked out. And the chapter ends with her blacking out. And that's why the merchant scene was so important. So that brings us to chapter 12, which is a convenient congregation. I just came up with these names like randomly. One day when I was compiling everything, I was like, oh, that sounds like a name. That's really all I did. That's a name that might work, maybe. So at this point, Carlos agrees with Max and Andy to go find a way to get them out. Because he's like, these people are not supposed to be locked up here. They're not criminals. What the fuck? He finds the dead bodies of 2 guards. The guards that Sheila killed. And he looks for keys on the bodies and doesn't see any. So he follows the trail he eventually finds Sheila. And we see that from Sheila's perspective. So he meets up with Sheila and all the people that she just freed. So that I mean, it's a convenient congregation. They all get together. Sheila agrees to help Carlos free Max and Andy, and they all prepare to leave together. So that's when we jump to a beautiful light. The first thing that happens, very first thing, is Eldregard smashes the statue that Aaron brought him. So Aaron hands him the statue, and Eldregard just smashes it on the ground. Eld smashes the statue to reveal Lifestone. See, that's why I don't know how I'm exactly going to get another one into Aaron's possession. I might change how he gets it, or I don't know. Parrish, we jump over to the Parrish viewpoint, and we find out that he's been watching through the window, and he knows exactly what that is. That was just revealed, the energy source for the magic. So he flips out and decides that the goddesses sent him, and that he needs to follow these people to find out more about the ancient magic that they are revealing to him through him spying on them creepily. So that happens, and then we jump right back into an Aaron perspective. This is called Glow here. I just called it Glow. What it is it's Aaron's first experience witnessing this energy, which has a like pulling effect on people, and it makes people think like that it's the greatest thing ever and they must have it for themselves, and how could anyone ever think anything is more beautiful than this life energy and that sort of stuff. After Aaron has all that explained to him, Eldregard finds out what time it is and freaks out, and he's like, we have a train to catch. And Aaron's like, what the fuck? And they basically run out the door. And Aaron is confused as all hell, but he follows along with it because his stepfather has been kidnapped. Parrish, watching, chasing, we've got that. Okay. Reaching for light. Right, so freeing M and A are Max and Andy. Freeing Max and Andy with Carlos, and I believe that's all that really happens there. They free Max and Andy, they get acquainted with each other. A mechanical monstrosity. So this is where people get a feel for like the world building of Amphora in terms of technology, because the train is brand new. You learn that essentially like a ride on a train for a passenger is reserved for the richest people on the planet. It's like akin to taking a private jet today, right? That's like taking the railway as a passenger is like that in this time period. So you get all of that in world building as Aaron and Eldregard are waiting on the platform for the train. And you also find out that all trains are used to transport goods. For that reason, they're not on the same sort of strict time schedule that like transportation modes that we in the modern day would be used to. And so it's explained to Aaron, a little piece of world building again, that like sometimes a train, if you buy a ticket on a train, the train could show up at 6 a.m. or it could show up at 6 p.m. or anytime in between. Like, you just know it's going to show up on that day, basically. And everything else depends. So these people who are taking these like exclusive train rides to places have to wait around on the platform like for hours and hours, and they have to show up early and stay late in some cases. So but obviously that's better than taking a horse and traveling for 4 days when the train will get you there in 20 hours, right? So that's the gist of like the conversation that they have. That's basically all that's really happening there. Waiting on platform, and then we get another viewpoint from Parrish. Oh wait, no, they get on the train. Right. Yeah, and Eldregard reveals to Aaron that he is a Windsworn. And Aaron knows who the Windsworn are. Aaron has actually thought about the Windsworn a number of times at this point. So the Windsworn are introduced as like these thieves and rebels, and they're known as like a rebellion and a group of like shady assassins to the wider world. So he's kind of like they're it's a little bit weird. I have to flesh it out a little bit better in rewrites for like the second draft and stuff. But basically they're viewed as villains, but they are also like, there's whispers of them doing like incredible things to stop corruption. So like they have it's like a propaganda thing, right? Like it's the Windsworn propaganda versus the foreign government propaganda, and there's a mixture of thoughts throughout society because of that. So like some people think that they're heroes and some people think that they're evil, and they get like this reputation from that essentially. So that's how Aaron reacts, because he doesn't know what to think. He's like, that's crazy, and my dad was involved with that, my stepdad was involved with that, the guy who raised me, like what the hell. So he's having like a sort of existential crisis. Aaron's just having like his world ripped out from underneath him in this section of the book. That's all this section of the book is about, really, for him. We've got that going, and then we jump over to Parrish, and we realize that Parrish is following, obviously. And also, I think it's a scene where Parrish sells all his fineries. I'm so horrible at spelling, if you haven't noticed. Following Eldon Aaron. So I think he sells like rings or something. He has something of value that he sells in order to get a ticket on the train, because it's extremely expensive. It's like getting on a private jet. So he has to sell some really good stuff to get on the train, but we see him do it, and it kind of shows that this is really important to him for some reason or another. And it's a religious reason. It's made clear that it's because of his religion, but there's not much more said. It's the guy called him Conduit, and then he saw the gem, and those two things make him realize that this guy might know something that he wants to he wants to talk to him about. So yeah, after that, we jump over to Finding Darkness. And you'll notice we have Reaching for Light for Sheila, and then Finding Darkness for Carlos and Sheila. This is where shit goes down. Carlos, and it's a Carlos perspective. Carlos and the group fight the Fomorian Warden. So one of those monsters that Eldregard killed earlier. There's a big fight scene here where all these enslaved people fight this monster, and they're getting massacred. Half the group dies, and the only way that they get away is because the mute guy that I mentioned earlier distracts the monster and gets him to chase after him. The mute guy and another guy, those two distract it, and that gives Carlos and Sheila and everyone the opportunity to run away. So the people who get out are just Carlos, Sheila, Maximilian, Andy, and Georgia. Georgia is one of Sheila's friends. So the 5 of them get out, and I believe Carlos, Sheila, and Georgia, yeah. What happens is some of Max gets out, exactly. Maximilian loses his legs in the fight, and hi Fruity, by the way, welcome. You popped in, and I'm probably going to be ending in 15-30 minutes, depending on how long part 1 takes to outline. But welcome. Yeah, so Maximilian loses his legs, and because of that, Sheila, Carlos, and Georgia are kind of distracted, like pulling him out. And he later describes to them why they were able to get away, like what happened exactly, because he was able to witness it. So that's what's happening here is Max describes how the I forgot the guy's name. I keep forgetting the mute guy's name. How he saved them, basically. So yeah, there's that. That's unfinished as of right now. So yeah, Maximilian. That was a heavy chapter to write. And I still have to. It's not even finished. I still have to write it. So we jump from here, and then we get to Aurie imprisoned. So this is a scene that basically just describes that she's in one of these plastic cells that we've been seeing over and over again. And she figures it out, and she figures out where she's at, and she sees this man in a cell across from her, and he's got these stone spikes growing out of his back, and he like and out of his head and stuff, and it's really a terrifying sight. And so she sees all this, and she's freaking out. She can tell she's underground somewhere, but she doesn't know what to do, and it's pretty bad. And then we jump over to a perspective of Loka, who we saw in the prologue. He is the kid with the orange hair who Aurie chased before getting knocked out, and we see him talking to a Fomorian, and it turns out that he is working for this guy. So and it seems like it's unclear, but it's basically told that Loka is somehow being rewarded for doing tasks for this guy, and it's something that he really wants, but it's not clear at all, like what that is or why he's doing it. And reminder that this guy seems like an 8-year-old kid, Loka, and it's really creepy. And yeah, And the description I gave of what Aurier saw, the monster Aurier saw, is also what the monster who dragged away Darius looks like. So that's she's connected to them in some way now, basically. Now we move on. A priest, an assassin, and a... what did I call this chapter? And a blacksmith. Which is exactly who we are seeing. It's Aaron waking up. In the last chapter, yeah. So when Parrish chases after them, and follows and sells all of his shit for a ticket, he gets onto the train, and as soon as he gets into the car where Aaron and Eldregard are, he hears Eldregard call out and say, "Conduit, come sit down, please." So he freaks out. He's like, "Oh shit!" And like Eldregard knew that he was following them. Basically, is the point. So, anyways, in this chapter, they're all on the train, and it's basically bringing Parrish together with them. It's like a character development sort of thing. Most of it is like Eldregard questioning Parrish, and he keeps a lot of secrets. So you notice that Eldregard is not giving away a lot of information. He's very suspicious of this guy, but he's also getting this guy used to what he's about. So he asks him like questions about politics. There's a little bit of world building in Parrish's responses, stuff like that. You learn the name of a few of the counselors from the High Council. Things like that are happening there. Aaron is not enjoying it. So Aaron actually gets up and walks away, and comes back after a while and realizes that Parrish is still on the same monologue about politics and stuff. It's kind of funny. I don't know. It might need work. It definitely needs work, but that's that. Simple chapter right there. And then we got The Shape of Water. This is where Aaron... this is why it was important for Aaron to have the stone earlier, the stone that contains life energy, because this is where Aaron learns that he is capable of flux. He leaves camp. They've left the train. This whole chapter is about like them having left the train and having picked up horses in a nearby town, and they're taking these horses through the woods at this point that we find them in. And then they set up camp, and Aaron gets annoyed, and it's been days and days, and Aaron decides that he's going to go off and like mess around with this life stone because he's had it for so long, and he wants to find out how to take in the energy like Eldregard did. So he sits there for a long time, and eventually he actually does it. And in doing it, he starts like freaking out. He's like, "Oh shit! Oh, well, maybe I can do the same stuff he did." And long story short, he accidentally turns this pond that he was hanging out in front of, like he turns all of the water into steel and gets his hand stuck inside it and passes out the same way that Eldregard did when he overused magic before. That happens, and he passes out, and that's the chapter's end. And then we jump over to Sheila. So in this chapter, I figured this would be a good spot to place this one. I'm not entirely certain about it yet. This might have to go into part 2, but so Sheila, Georgia, Maximilian, and Andy all find out that they have like separate abilities that they were never informed of in the prison. So Sheila finds out that her and Georgia are infusers, but that there's another kind of magic called shifting, and They learn all of that by experimenting, and it's a scene that it describes the magic system even further, so that the reader now, like at this point, the reader probably has a pretty good grasp of how the magic works, at least to the extent that they could figure out like what someone's capable of and what someone's not capable of. That this chapter is all about that, and it's described as they experiment on it. And then we jump over to Carlos, and we get the someone who doesn't understand the magic's perspective, and he also lies to Sheila because Sheila tells him not to tell his guard buddies about anything that happened, because she knows that they're connected to like all of the foreign government, which is the cause of this corruption, and that anyone he tells is likely to screw them over. Carlos says that he will not tell his guard buddies, and it's explicitly a lie because we're in his perspective. So he's like, I'm not very good at lying, but I'll try, and then says like, I won't tell them. I might change that. I don't know. It actually works pretty well, I think. I'll have to reread it. But then Carlos immediately goes and reports to his captain. So that happens. He basically outright betrays them. He lies to them. And then we jump right back into Aaron with The Weight of Steel. I really like those two chapter names. The Shape of Water and The Weight of Steel. It's an Aaron perspective, and Eld helps Aaron get out of his predicament, explaining it's a good thing he found out, because Aaron is now suffering from what is called life lack, and life lack kind of makes you just like depressed as shit. So he's like feeling real awful, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry that I stole the gem and all this stuff. He's not even thinking about how incredible it is that he can use magic. He's just like apologizing and feeling like he's an awful person. And Eldregard's like, no, you don't get how awesome this is. Like, you can use magic. That's great. This is going to help out so much. And so that happens, and then he gets brought back to camp and fed and stuff. So he's going to be recovering for a minute there. We're jumping right into another Aaron perspective in the next chapter, which is either going to be called Unexpected Guest or Family Matters. I haven't decided. Aaron and Eldregard convo about fam. Aaron is pissed at Eldregard, essentially, and that's mostly what this is about. Aaron's pissed that he has so much hidden from him. The guy's not telling him anything, and he's dragged him like away from his home, and now they're in the middle of the woods, like, and he's confused and shit. So Aaron's going through some shit, and that's basically what that section is about. It's about Everin and what may have happened to him and why he's important and stuff. Like, Aaron's trying to figure out why Everin is so important to the foreign government that he would be kidnapped. So then we jump. Yeah, so he goes to sleep. It's like a day at the camp sort of a thing that happens there. And then we get a perspective of Parrish, who's at camp with them now. So what happens here is a man shows up in camp and trips over their ship, and Parrish discovers him. It's kind of a humorous situation, but you don't really know who the guy is. And then we jump over to an Aaron perspective when he's waking up in the morning, and he gets introduced to this guy, Borellian. He's told that this guy is a stranger who stumbled upon their camp, and I forget how much information Aaron is given, but eventually we find out that Eldregard and Borellian are friends because they're both part of the Windsworn, and Borellian kind of like knew that Eldregard was in the area. They had like a planned meetup sort of a thing. I haven't exactly explained everything, so I may change things, but this guy shows up, and he is an ally of Eldregard's, but he is confused as to why Aaron is with him, and it's not clear at all at this point that this is happening, but he's basically like, why do you have the kid with you? Because Eldregard's actually very closely tied to Aaron in other ways, so we'll find that out later. But for now, this guy Bo shows up. That's what I'm gonna say. Anyway, a strange sort of matter. Orie meets Adho. Right. So she actually has woken up and thought about some things, and this guy with the spikes growing out of his back is there as well. Like awake. He's awake finally. Like it had been a while, a few days, and she had been completely silent, not answering him, not talking to him. He never responded. He was silent too. They were both not talking to each other. And then she decided one day, like, I'm gonna have a conversation with this guy, see what the hell's going on. So that happens, and he explains that they're underground. He's very dull. I'd have to read it out, the whole dialogue, to explain it, but like he's not very conscious of what the hell's going on, like, and he doesn't use descriptors in his language, so like she keeps trying to get information out of him, and he'll be like, we're under the place that we were. And she's like, what does that mean? Like, under the place that we were? Like, that doesn't help me at all. He's like, the bad ones will hurt us if we don't do what they say. And she's like, what the hell does all of this mean? I don't know. So that's the gist of their conversation. Like, he explains things to her without it meaning much of anything. I mean, it means something. That's not the right way to say it, but without giving her any clues as to what's actually going on, or like why she's been imprisoned, you know. And then she starts to try and figure out a way out, and she's like thinking that this material, like, it's never explicitly called plastic because it's from her perspective, and she's never seen, she feels like she doesn't know it's plastic, right? So she's thinking about how to get out of this trap that she's in, this cage, and she starts to think, like, I know what this material is, I've seen it before somewhere, but where? And then she has like a flashback, and it's her and Aaron and Everin in the smithy, and they're making a plastic sword. Everin is teaching Aaron how to make a sword made of plastic, and so they're talking about it. They're like, why would anyone need a sword made of this stuff? And he's like, I have no clue, but it pays really well, and this stuff is really expensive, and here's how it works. And he's describing like the method of like the chemicals you use and stuff to make the plastic moldable, and how it will burn if you don't do it right, and all this stuff. And she realizes, like, oh, this stuff will melt, this stuff will burn. And so that's like a realization that she has, right? And that's what that chapter is. And that leads her to planning her escape, essentially. So we're getting very close to the end of part 1. Revelations. Now, this is essentially where Aaron learns everything that's happening. Aaron contemplates in camp, and so this is Aaron is real fucking angry, and he's like whittling or something, I think I had him doing. I'm extremely jealous of how good you are at mapping all this out. Well, listen, I've written all of this already. Like, we haven't even gotten to the part where I need to actually map what I haven't written. So, just wait. I will probably be floundering once we get into section 2. So this part is, I don't know how to describe this part. Aaron contemplates in camp, and so he's mad. He's still pissed. And then Eld finally comes and finds him, and he's like, I promised I would tell you everything, so I'm going to tell you everything. And then he brings him out, like, away from Parrish and Bo so that they don't overhear. And he starts explaining, like, everything to Aaron. So he explains how the Amphorans have been kidnapping people who are capable of this magic that Aaron's now capable of, and imprisoning them and using them to create wealth and stuff. He's like, this place has like Amphora. There's no raw materials here. It's like practically a desert. And how do you think like they get all of their goods? Like, why is this the richest country in the world? And he goes on, and like, it's revealed basically that the reason they're doing it, that they're able to, is because they're using everyone who's capable of this magic to, like, make whatever they need and to get their country to become the most powerful ever. So he tells Aaron all of that, and he's already told Aaron that he's a Windsworn and all this stuff, and it culminates, and it's really hard to explain why this next part happens, like, quickly. He knocks out Aaron, and Aaron blacks out, and because Eldregard attacked him. And then that's the end of the chapter, because it's from Aaron's perspective, and he just blacked out. And then we jump over to a perspective from Borellian, the guy who just showed up at camp. Stories and plans. So what Borellian is talking about, I think at this point he's revealed that he was a prisoner in one of these factories to the group. I think he has done that, and I think that's what sparks the conversation that Aaron and Eldregard are having. I'm drawing a blank right now, but I'm pretty sure that's how that goes down. So Borellian is talking to Parrish, and he tells Parrish about how Fomorians exist. And he's like, oh, those Fomorians are terrible. You should see them. I once saw them, like, burn a handprint right into my friend's face. He's got the scar still, and all this crazy stuff. I think the way that this is paired, it's paired with a previous chapter where Parrish is talking to Bo, and Parrish is, like, seeing Bo as this, like, crass, nonsensical person, and then we see Bo looking at Parrish like he's a nonsensical, stuck-up guy. So we get, like, both of their viewpoints and how they view each other as, like, they both see each other as kind of stupid. So Bo tells Parrish about the Fomorians, and then in this same chapter we have Orie planning her escape. So at this point, after that little segue, Aaron wakes up. And Aaron wakes up being tied to a tree with everything he brought with him strewn about in front of him, and Eldregard standing in front of him. And Eldregard gives him this, like, speech about how, like, he's sorry he had to do this and he didn't want it to be this way, but you wanted to know the truth, and once you know the truth, like, you have to be a part of the Windsworn. So you need to make a decision. And if you decide to be part of the Windsworn, you're going to be sworn to do some things that will be terrible, like you will be an assassin and you will not be happy about it. And you like killing someone is never good, right? And like that's basically what you would be conscripted to do and all this stuff. He's basically being told, like, if you want to know everything, then you have to join us, and it's an awful life. Like, don't do that. I don't want you to do that. So you either but in order to join, he has to escape. And he gives him 3 choices, basically. He's like, fail, and I will have to kill you. Succeed and stay, and you will have to be a windsworn. Or succeed and run away, and I'll make sure no one chases you if you run away. You're capable of this magic. You can go fend for yourself. You can go create tons of gold and live in a faraway land and never hear from me or any of us ever again. And then he jumps off a cliff. And that is where the chapter ends. Now, before this point, we obviously need the Eldregard prologue, that used to be a prologue, to exist, because it shows him jumping off of a really high place and surviving the fall by using magic, so to slow himself down and stuff. So that obviously has to be shown so that no one thinks that it's like something it's not. And part 2, and then the interlude is Theodrin, and that's a whole nother thing. We can get into that after. I'll get into that next time. We can talk about Theodrin, because that's a whole thing I'd have to get into. But this one's called Initiation. So, Section 2, I know where Part 2 is going to kind of start. I know some things that are going to start in Part 2. I already have written everything that I've written for NaNoWriMo, which is essentially parts 1 through 4 for Carlos and Sheila. So that's going to be what I do next time. That's it. That's part 1. That's what I've already written, essentially. There's more for Carlos and Sheila's parts, obviously, and there's a few chapters that I've finished in part 2. Like, I've finished Aaron completing his test and contemplating what he's going to do. I've got part of an Eldregard chapter in there of him reacting to what he just did, because we got all of that from Aaron's perspective at this point. So we're like, damn, this Eldregard guy is an asshole. What the fuck? I'll try and catch the next ones. This was fun. I'm glad you had fun. Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad that I finally figured out a way to describe the entirety of my story up to this point in like a simple and concise way. So I'm probably going to take the VOD of this and cut it down into just the description of the story. So maybe I can get it down to an hour or 45 minutes. And then we could, I could post that up to my YouTube, and I could share that out to people as they come in, like wondering what the hell I'm writing. It'll be a lot easier to show them that video than to describe it every single time. But yeah, this was a ton of fun. Thanks for stopping in, Fruity. I appreciate it. Have a great night. Peace. Most of my writing stuff is going to be happening on a little bit of an impromptu basis for a while I'm doing this outlining thing. Once I get down to solidly writing, I'll probably be scheduling my writing streams. But for now, this sort of stuff kind of comes to me randomly, and I need to be able to do it whenever it comes to me, rather than scheduling it out for myself.